Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Church Hub AI Edition. We're going to be talking about real stuff, real ministry, not just the stuff that you see on Sundays. I'm joined here by Rick Bulman. He brings over 30 years of ministry experience from youth pastoring to associate pastoring, all the way to leading churches as a senior pastor. Rick's heart is to bring honesty, encouragement, and practical wisdom to these conversations. Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mo.
Yeah, today we're starting with a big one.
Okay.
The hidden weight of pastoring. What do pastors really carry? What do the people not see? And we're going to unpack the emotional, the mental load that comes with being a pastor and why understanding it really matters for both pastors and the people they lead. It's not just for pastors. It's for everybody. So whether you are a pastor or you're somebody who goes to church and has a pastor, I think you're going to get a lot out of today. So Rick, when people think of pastors, they often picture Sundays, sermons, being up in the pulpit, as we call it, or the lectern. They think of weddings. They think of funerals. All of us as pastors have a suit that we wear to both the wedding and the funeral. It's very versatile.
Yeah.
What's the hidden side of the job that most people don't ever see?
Yeah, when I was first senior pastor, somebody said, well, what do you work, like 2 hours a week?
That.
Seriously, no. But that is kind of what people see, the public side of pastoring, the preaching, the weddings, the hospital visits. But, really what's hidden is the constant emotional weight we carry, walking with people through grief and disappointment and conflict. It's the 2 a.m. phone calls that the confidential burdens, it's the 2 a.m. phone calls that we receive and everything that we do behind the scenes that we carry, that nobody sees. And it's not really easy to share with people. Like, you could say it, they don't really get it until they actually live it. And so, you've got the constant pressures of expectations. Pastors live in the tension of both joy and pain, I would say, every week. People often don't realize that behind the pulpit is someone quietly carrying the heavy stories of many people. So there's a lot going on that people don't see.
If you had to describe the weight, as we're talking about, of pastoring in one word or an image, what would that be?
I heard this years ago, and I would describe it as a backpack full of rocks. Each rock represents a story. Each rock represents a crisis, a person's pain that we're asked to carry alongside of them. So individually, none of those rocks feel overwhelming. They don't. But over time, the weight of all, or the many story, a crisis, a person's pain, all those rocks, they add up. And some days you can't even feel the straps of the backpack full of rocks digging into your shoulders. It just becomes part of who you are. Sometimes you're just like, this is my new normal. And we get accustomed to it and we get kind of stuck. And so the challenge is you just can't set the backpack down at the end of the day. It comes home with you. It's in your thoughts, and believe it or not, it's even in your dreams.
Sounds like something for your next book. I mean, that's a great way to think about it. I mean, as soon as you said that, I started feeling my own shoulders feeling that weight. So
I didn't mean to trigger you.
No, I'm going to need some pastoral counseling after this. Rick, what are some of the biggest emotional burdens that pastors carry that rarely get talked about?
Yeah, I would say one of the heaviest burdens is living with constant criticism. It could be preaching. You're preaching too deep. Your preaching's too shallow. And you might even have a strategy behind it, and you can unpack that, but you're just not going to please everyone. You could change something. You can change a service time. You can do a remodel, or you're going to move the piano from the left side of the stage to the right side of the stage. And someone's always going to think that you did it wrong or question it. You constantly live under that scrutiny. When it comes to caring for families, you could visit one family, but another one's going to feel overlooked or forgotten. You live in a fishbowl, and your kids are in a fishbowl. And so your kids' behavior is being scrutinized because they're expected to be perfect when they're just kids. Your clothing, there's just so much. Like, I remember somebody said, hey, you shouldn't wear that shirt when you preach because of the design pattern. It's so distracting. Well, let's say there's 100 people in the room and there's only one person that says that. The other 99 didn't even think about it. But that's the one that's going to stick with you. It just hits you. And so, you get blamed, if growth happens, if growth doesn't happen. So, and plus, that's the emotional burden and what we have to deal with. But there's also stuff outside of criticism, I would say. You pour into ministry, but sometimes you feel like you're still not even giving enough, but you're max and you can't give any more, but you want to. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. How does carrying the confidential struggles that
Yeah,
we have as pastors, there's a lot of people that we're talking to, and those confidential struggles, they can affect our own mental and emotional health. Can you talk
sure.
to me about that?
Yeah, confidentiality is a is sacred in ministry. It just is. And so, but it can also be isolating. It's not just sacred, but it's isolating, meaning you carry people's deepest hurts, the marriage struggles, their addictions, their fears, yet you can't talk about them. There's no outlet for you per se. And over time, it builds a private emotional so sometimes it feels like you're a vault filled with other people's pain, but you can't release it. And so that's why many pastors wrestle with compassion fatigue, I would call it, or burnout. You can't unknow what people confide in you. And without a healthy outlet, it's easy to feel crushed under the weight of this silence of just knowing everything. I don't know how God does it. He's got a whole
Absolutely.
planet.
Yeah, there's a plan, and you can read about that plan, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
Rick, do pastors feel pressure to always appear strong and spiritually unshaken, even when they have struggles themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this unspoken expectation that pastors must be the steady ones. They're the rock others lean on, if you will. And I get it. We're the leader. The leader needs to be strong. And, that is important. I understand all of that. But admitting doubt, admitting fear or struggle can feel risky, as if people, are going to lose confidence in your leadership. One example, I had a church council member, in our church, we call them council versus board, but I was just being transparent. I didn't know the answer. And if I don't know, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to bend it, make it look like I know. I don't know the answer. And I don't know what God's going to do. He didn't tell me. And so I simply conveyed, at this point concerning this issue, I'm really at a loss with all of you. And just going to have to pray. I don't know what God's going to do. I'll be honest, I'm a little scared. I'm concerned. I future proof everything and I think ahead and oh gosh, this can go one of a few ways. And yeah, I'm a little nervous about this. Well, I got a long letter from them saying that they were leaving the church because they needed their pastor to have more faith. And I thought, I'm just trying to be real with my leadership team. So people forget that pastors are human. We wrestle with the same anxieties and temptations. The pressure to look unshaken, I believe it leads to loneliness because you hesitate to share your struggles. So you just keep it to yourself. So yeah, it's a very real thing.
Yeah, let's talk about those expectations from the congregation, staff, even the family. How do they add that invisible weight?
Wow, that word, expectations. It comes from every direction. The congregation expects you to be available, visionary, and compassionate. You have not just a vision for the church, but Pastor, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Like we have some sort of secret sauce that we can look into their life and tell them what go left, not right. We don't know. We don't read their mail necessarily. The staff expects you to lead with clarity, and sometimes you just don't know. But you got to pray. You know what you need to do to get to the no, but you don't know in that moment. Family expects you to be, balance out ministry with being present at home. All these expectations are good, but together they can feel crushing. It's like juggling without the option to drop the ball. The weight comes from knowing you can't meet everyone's need, yet you feel guilty when you fall short. So the gap between, I would say, expectations and reality is exhausting.
Yeah, and hearing all this really makes me think that pastors, they have to work smarter. You can't just work harder because you're going to tap out.
Yeah.
So if they're going to keep up with the demands of the job, what can they do? Because, at Rising Tide, we're always looking to partner with companies and people that can help others. Can you talk to me more about that? Because I just loved what I heard about Church Hub.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. It's not about working harder. It is about working smarter because you've got all these expectations that you're trying to juggle and you're just going to drop the ball. So, you're going to burn out. So what pastors need margin. Like if somebody came in and go, "Hey, look, I'm going to give you $1 million to your fund." Okay, that's great, but your mental margin is still the same. Your time is still being sucked up by non-ministry tasks. So that's why I built Church Hub AI. What used to take hours staring at a spreadsheet gets done in minutes. That's working smarter, not harder. And when those drains are removed, pastors can give their best energy to what matters most, which is leading people, which is loving people, which is shepherding people, and ultimately meeting the expectations that truly matter. So, Church Hub AI is a phenomenal tool to help in that area.
What role does loneliness play in pastoral ministry, even when you're surrounded by people all the time?
Yeah. Loneliness is surprisingly common in ministry. I heard this years ago, and it's true. It's lonely at the top. You're always surrounded by people, but often you feel like you can't fully be yourself. Friendships can get complicated because of your role, and you're cautious about who you can trust. Sometimes you're the one checking in on everyone else, but no one checks in on you. And that creates this quiet isolation. It's a reminder that the quantity of relationships doesn't equal the depth of connection. So pastors need a safe space to be known as real people too. So what I do is I seek out peer relationships outside my church and invest in one or two trusted confidants so that I have a place to go. So for me, over the years, I've got about 3 to 5 I can choose at any given time and just vomit what I'm going through, and they help me walk through it. So it's really good to have.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that. A lot of pastors don't take care of themselves. So, what are the practices or the rhythms that you have found that
Yeah.
help you carry the weight in a healthy way?
Yeah. So for me, rhythms of rest and connection are non negotiable. Sabbath isn't just a suggestion, it's survival. And I've learned I need people outside my church who can handle my honesty. So I lean on trusted mentors and peers. That's another thing I do. Another thing, exercise is a great outlet. Journaling, prayer, they help me process what I carry instead of, bottling it up. But just as important as it is protecting those rhythms, the urgent will always try to crowd out the important. I heard that. And so I've had to be intentional about working smarter and setting boundaries so that those things that keep me healthy don't get pushed aside.
Yeah, and you've said that you've had to be intentional about working smarter, setting boundaries so that
Yeah.
these things that keep you healthy don't get pushed aside. So, unpack that a little bit for me. What does being intentional actually look like
Mhm.
for you or anybody in a day-to-day ministry?
So I'd say, let's start with the Sabbath. Block the Sabbath on your calendar first. Treat it like it's the most important meeting of the week. It's not an optional day off. One of the things I like to do is I like to batch routine my tasks. I set aside a focused block to answer emails or to do admin, and I guard that. There's a boundary there. I learned to say no. It feels awkward because I'm letting that person down. They have an expectation for me to be there, and it's 4 a.m. and they want coffee. Like, no, like, sorry, I can't do that, So I had to learn to be okay, learn to be at peace with no. And because here's the thing, every yes to a non-essential request is no to something that really matters. And so be good at saying no. I would also say delegate and empower others to do the work. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. Guess what? That's okay. That's how they learn. That's how they grow. So, I would just say you do those things, find tools and systems, to make your life easier. It's the same idea that I had with, creating Church Hub AI, and there's other, platforms out there. Technology isn't about replacing your calling. It's about giving you the efficiency you need so you can focus on people instead of processes. And so these are the things that I've learned to do over time and I've seen others do. And it's really helped me be way more efficient and actually give me the mental margin that I need to actually be more effective as a pastor.
So, Rick, have there been moments when the hidden weight almost made you want to quit? And if so, what pulled you back?
Yeah. There have been seasons where the weight has felt unbearable, when criticism was remarkably loud, or when I felt like I had nothing left to give. I'm feeling tapped out and my patience with people gone. But there's this one thing that always keeps me anchored. And it's not the encouragement I got when I was 19 that said, you should be doing this. or wasn't the success of an event that happened last year or 3 years ago. Oh, I got to reproduce that. It was something deeper. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am called. I didn't step into ministry as a career choice. I was called by God. And when hardships come, and they always will, it's that certainty of calling that steadies me and keeps me from throwing in the towel. And God's faithfulness through past challenges reminds me He hasn't brought me this far to leave me now. And the voices of my family, close friends, and mentors, those trusted advisors I have in my life, those 3 to 5, them encouraging me, coupled with the very thing that anchors me, a call from God, it makes it doable, and it gives me wind in my sails to just go, okay, I can do this. And I have my moment and I get right back at it because I know that I'm anchored to what God is calling me to do.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. And so I'd love to hear, what encouragement would you give to pastors and to congregations about recognizing and sharing this hidden load?
To pastors, I would say you don't have to carry it all alone. Find safe people to confide in, and don't be afraid of vulnerability, especially with those people. To congregations, I'd say, remember your pastor is human. He bleeds red just like you, but he's supposed to live above reproach. Absolutely he is, and he should. And he should be everything that Timothy talks about as far as a leader. This is a man that carries the emotional burden of not just his own life, but his family life, and then his congregation. And that is a heavy weight that most people don't even realize what it feels like to carry. So I would say pray for them. I would say encourage them. I would say offer them grace. And sometimes the smallest thank you. It means way more than you know.
So you've been describing what pastors need, and it sounds a lot like the vision behind some of the tools that you're working on. So how does that connect?
Well, that's the heart of it. Pastors aren't meant to carry the weight alone. So we need safe people and supportive congregations. But we also need systems that make the load lighter. And that's really where Church Hub AI comes in. It doesn't replace the calling. It just takes the excess weight off your shoulders so that you can carry the part only you can carry. So when pastors work smarter, not harder, they lead healthier. And when pastors are healthier, churches are healthier too. Think of all the non-ministry tasks that you do that literally hijack your time. Church Hub AI very literally gives you back up to, if not more, 75% of that time back because it's done, so quick, those tasks. So you get those tasks completed. You can focus on people. You're about pastoring people, not pushing paper. Hey, look, you've got more mental margin. And you actually feel like you're doing what you're called to do, which is being about people, not being a glorified admin who on occasionally gets to pastor people and love on them. So that's what the system does. It brings all that together and gives you a lighter load.
Yeah. Well, Rick, I look forward to more of these conversations. To the audience, thanks so much for listening to this edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Church Hub AI edition. We hope that this conversation gave you something to think about. Rick, this is just the beginning. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mo. We'll see you.
All right.